What is going on, guys? So today we're going to talk about the IRR, the Individual Ready Reserve, and what the heck it is. I thought I knew what it was. I thought I knew what you had to do and all that stuff, but as I was doing a little bit of research for this video, you can actually do a lot more in the IRR than I thought. So we're going to talk about that today in this video. So like I said, there is a lot that has to do with the IRR. Whenever I was looking up some stuff, and there will be some links down below for you guys to kind of go and check it out yourself and kind of familiarize and give you a better understanding of what the IRR is. Again, that is Individual Ready Reserve. I used to think it was Inactive Ready Reserve because that is what people told me, but it is not Inactive Ready Reserve. It is the Individual Ready Reserve, and that individual is kind of important, and we will talk about that later. But first, I do want to let you guys know that on my Instagram, I'm doing a Jim Fidel giveaway right now. So this is the Lift Heavy or Die Weak t-shirt that Jim Fidel has. The giveaway post is on Instagram right now, so head over to my Instagram, check out their stuff, and if you don't want to wait around for the Instagram giveaway, then 20% off for code WARD is going to give you, 20% off. But let's cover some basic knowledge for the IRR real quick before we get into some of the more interesting things. So if you have no clue what the IRR is, if you're curious about, joining the military and you've never heard of it before, if you didn't know, every single person who signs up for military service, their military service obligation, MSO, is 8 years, right? So whether you're doing a 4-year active duty commitment for those 8 years, or you do a 3 or a 6-year commitment in the active reserves or the selected reserves of those 8 years, you're still signing up for 8 years. And once you finish either that active service component or that reserve or active reserve service component, you are then going to be transferred into the IRR. Most people think it's kind of like you're just completely out of the military. You are kind of out of the military because you're not really having to do anything. You don't have to abide by, AR 670-1. You can let your hair grow out. You can grow facial hair. You can really do whatever the heck you want with a few stipulations of what you're going to have to do on a apparently annual basis. But for the most part, you're basically out of the military, but you're still in the IRR. You're still in a reserve component, which is kind of important, which means that you're still technically a part of the military, which means that you can still be mobilized and deployed in order to fight whatever wars are going on. And so whenever I was doing this video and I was thinking about what to talk about, I wanted to let you guys know kind of how often these things happen, or really how recently people have been deployed from the IRR. It is not a very likely thing. I just want to tell you guys this, don't be super worried like, oh my gosh, I'm going to basically do 8 years. It's very, very unlikely, and even the articles and stuff that I've talked about, even if they're like deploying like 10,000 soldiers from the IRR, like it's still a very small percentage of people, and then at the end of the day, it's still dependent upon your MOS. But one of the more kind of major-ish mobilizations that I saw was in 2008, which is fairly recently, and there was a presidential order extending the national emergency for mobilizing a bunch of IRR soldiers from the 2001 terrorist attacks. There was like an entire 12-year stint that we had a national emergency that was declared against the war on terror. And that's something that's interesting I saw, because of that whole period of time from I think it was 2001 to 2012, past 2011, 2012, they were deploying some of the IRR soldiers as well as some of the reserve soldiers. And I will read off here just so I don't kind of screw things up, kind of the numbers. So the first thing is, if the president decides that he wants to mobilize a bunch of reserve soldiers under Title 10 of the United States Code, gives the president the authority without declaring war to mobilize 200,000 reservists, and of those 200,000 reservists, no more than 30,000 of those can be IRR. So there's way more, there's several hundreds of thousands of soldiers that are in the IRR, so it's still a low possibility if the president decides to, send a whole bunch of reservists out to augment the active duty forces. And then the next big thing is, if we declare war, the president has or actually it's really Congress, has the authority to mobilize 1 million soldiers that are reservists. And if you do get mobilized during a state of war, you're going to have to apparently serve 24 months or 2 years of service during that whole mobilization process. I didn't mention this about the 200,000 soldiers that could be, activated. You're gonna have to serve a minimum of 270 days of service with a max of 400 days. So if you kind of do get called to active, it's not gonna be like super long. Like, if it's like a year after your contract, you've done 4 years, you got 3 years left, I guess it would only be just a couple of years maximum. So that's something to think about. So essentially, if the United States government, United States Congress, the president declares war, then that is going to be whenever they start calling up all these IRR soldiers. But until then, you don't really have to worry about it. And even if that happens, it's still apparently a low possibility from what these numbers are saying. So long story short, you don't have to worry about mobilizing unless we go on like a full-on big war, which the last time this happened was a war on terror, started in 2001 and it lasted until 2012. So now I'm gonna finally talk about the more interesting things that I did not know about whenever it comes to the IRR. Now I've talked about, the 8 years things, what's the chances of you deploying and all that stuff, but what are the obligations? What are the things that you have to do when you are in the IRR? And I actually didn't know this. I was not briefed on this, obviously, because I haven't gotten out of the military yet. Whenever you're getting out of the military, they should be briefing you on this stuff. But I guess just letting you guys know this because I've done some research myself. But every year, you are supposed to kind of get medical checkups. You're supposed to make sure that you get in contact with whatever branch of service that you are in. You're supposed to notify whatever branch of service that you are in if you move, if you get married, whatever your marital status is, how many dependents you have, certain basic things like that. And I say supposed to because it really doesn't happen all that much, and I don't think a lot of people who get out of the military even know that they're supposed to do this because, number one, I didn't know that you were supposed to do this, and then by reading all these different articles, it's saying that there are tens of thousands of unaccounted for reserve or IRR soldiers because they're not keeping up with their addresses, right? So if they move, if they get a new phone number and all that stuff, and they don't tell whatever branch that they were in, obviously that branch is going to have a hard time getting in contact with them because of that. So that's really interesting. You're supposed to do that stuff, but apparently it's not like a huge big requirement. Now I mentioned before that the IRR is the individual ready reserves, and I said that individual is kind of important there. Now why is the individual important? Why is it not just inactive ready reserves? Because you're just not in the military anymore really, but you again really are. You're individually ready, and what that means is you can kind of do whatever the heck you want in the reserves. And what I mean by that is if you want to do some active duty stuff, if you wanted to go to some drills, if you want to drill for points, if you want to even work up to apparently get promoted, you can still do that in the IRR, right? So if you finish out your contract and you do your 8 years, another thing that you can do is, apparently this is something that I didn't know, is you can elect to stay in the IRR. Like you can stay in the IRR and use that as like a way to serve your country in a way. So like you can just be like, I don't want to be in the reserves, like the full-on reserves, I don't want to be active duty, but I'll stay in the IRR just in case the country needs me. I didn't know you could do that, so that's really interesting. And then, I read across several different articles of people that could get promoted in the IRR, and I knew in a way that you could do this because I knew in the reserves you get points, and whenever you retire it's basically an accumulation of all of the points that you have. And since the IRR is a component of the reserves, what happens in the reserves is in order to have a good year that qualifies for your retirement is you have to have at least 75 points. But in the IRR, you have to have 50 points. And let's say 1 day is 1 point. Just like use that, very simple. 1 day is 1 point, but it's like, how are you gonna get those 50 points in the IRR? Well, apparently you can take some classes online. You can take some like advancement or whatever classes. I don't know exactly what they would be because I haven't taken them. But apparently there are some classes that you can take online that will give you some extra points. And then you can volunteer for some drill days. You can volunteer for some, active duty orders and get those points from those drill days. I remember being at drill a few times in my recent couple years of being in the reserves and hearing a few times of people saying that they're just drilling for points. They're not actually drilling to get paid. So they are literally going to a reserve drill, just for points, not even to get paid for their retirement, which was something that I guess kind of flew over my head, you know, whenever I was like a lower enlisted, like a PFC private, or whenever, I can't remember the exact time or what rank I was at whenever I remember hearing these things, but kind of flew over my head. But that is apparently something that you can do, and that's something I guess you should know that you can do if you decide to do that, if whenever you decide to get out, if that's a plan that you want to, you know, take on, if you want to do, you know, your 4 years of active duty, if you want to do your reserve, you know, commitment, and then maybe try to do this whole IRR thing. Now I know that a lot of this is kind of new to me, and I have read up a lot on it just before this video, but a lot of it is still, it's new to me. If this seems like something that you're interested in whenever you comes close to you getting out of the military, make sure you kind of do your due diligence, figure that out, figure out what you can and cannot do, because it's pretty interesting. Like, you can do several years in the military and then kind of like work your way in the IRR to maybe still get retirement, right? So you could do a lot of years, either active or reserves, do kind of like an IRR thing, and then still get your 20 years to then get your retirement, which is pretty interesting. Now there's a whole lot of this stuff that I could talk about, but I kind of really just wanted to not only kind of just give you a bare bones basics of what the heck the IRR is and what happens like when you can get deployed or whatever, but I kind of want to spark your interest a little bit and maybe do some of your own research to, you know, inform yourself of what the IRR is, because remember, everybody is signing up for it. Everybody who serves in the military is signing up for that IRR, and you could get mobilized, or what you could do is use it to your benefit to try and get some extra pay out of it. If you want to, you could volunteer for different things, and you know, volunteering, this is another little fact here. If you volunteer for service in the IRR, it could be either paid or not paid, but also if you ever get involuntarily sent on active duty orders or sent on any kind of orders involuntarily, they have to pay you. So that's kind of just a little interesting fact there. But again, I just want to spark your guys' interest in this because there's just a lot. So links are down below. Check it out for yourself. But for me, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button. That would be awesome. If you want to check out some more videos, hit the subscribe button. That would be even better. If you haven't hit the notification bell button, hit the notification bell button. Follow me on Instagram and Snapchat. Again, the giveaway is going on right now. What does it say? Lift heavy or die weak. So if you want to lift heavy and not die weak, pick up this t-shirt. It's awesome. Anyways, I hope you guys have an amazing freaking day, and I will see you later.